welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be having a look at this CF Moto's 675 SRR. It's CF Moto's new entry to the middleweight sports bike market. It's featuring their own brand. Now you'd be forgiven if thinking it's a copy of Triumph, but it's not. Okay, yes, it's a 675 and yes, it's an inline triple, but it's their own design engine, and it's kicking out just about 94 brake horsepower, which really puts it at the top of its power for a market for the bikes it's competing with. Because you might look at it and think, you know what, that's not really competitive with the current crop of super sport bikes. Well, it's not really designed to compete with things like the R6 and bits and pieces like the R9. It's designed to compete with the R7, the GSX-8 RS from Suzuki, the Triumph Daytona 660, those sort of bikes. That's what this is designed to kick out against. And believe me, it's doing a blooming good job of doing it. And for your buck, you're getting, for £6,999 on the road with a 4-year warranty, you're getting a hell of a lot of bike for your money. Not only getting that engine, which we'll come to in a bit, which is an absolute peach, you're getting top drawer componentry, really. The electronics, they're not cheap rubbish, they are good quality stuff. Suspension is fully adjustable front and rear K-Arbor, and the brakes here, you're looking at Jejuan, who you might be forgiven for not knowing. However, they are a subsidiary of Brembo, a Spanish subsidiary of Brembo, so they are, yet again, top drawer stuff. You really can't fault it. The bike is a real world bike that you can actually use on the road. Power delivery is nice and smooth, and it feels, the riding position isn't as extreme as your usual super sport bike, so it's a little bit more, maybe it's a bit more like a late 90s kind of CBR as far as riding position goes, something a little bit more road biased. Anyhow, let's get levers on, we'll go out and have a go and see how it goes. But before we do that, let's quickly fire it up and just see how it sounds. Oh, and before we get underway, let's just talk about this pretty cool start-up sequence when you turn the bike on. I mean, just look at these headlights and the rear brake light as you turn it on and off. I mean, tell me that's not cool. Come on. Right, so this one's interesting, because normally with bikes like this, you already know the conversation before you even ride it. Chinese bike, middleweight sports bike, cheapish, probably alright, probably compromised somewhere, obvious. And then there's this, CF Moto 675 SRR. A 675 triple making just under 100 horsepower, looking suspiciously expensive for something costing about £7 on the road in the UK. And honestly, I came into this expecting to like it, but not necessarily expecting to rate it. So today we're doing a proper Sussex roads crossing hand out towards Heathfield, Brighton, Hose Heath, Lewis, that sort of way. All the greasy nonsense of the county throws up at motorcycles. Cold surfaces, broken tarmac, tight B roads, fast A road sweepers, traffic, cambers, gravel where there absolutely shouldn't be gravel, and basically the sort of roads that immediately expose whether a sports bike has actually been developed properly or just designed to look good outside a cafe. So let's go and find out. The first thing you notice isn't actually the engine, it's the finish. The paint's decent, TFT screen's sharp, switch gear feels properly solid, nothing feels flimsy or cheap, which immediately throws you a bit because the price tag says it should feel more budget than it actually does. Now, the first honest thing straight away, low speed throttle response. Yeah, it's slightly snatchy, just off idle, doing awkward little mini roundabout speeds. There's a slight abruptness there, nothing terrible, not dangerous, just not perfectly polished quite yet. The clutch saves it though because it's ridiculously light. Honestly, around town it's actually easier to manage than most super sport looking bikes. So the heart of this whole thing is the 675 inline triple. It's about 95 horsepower at 11,000 RPM, so that's give or take. 70 newton meters of torque at around 8,000-ish. Wet weight is around 189 kilos, and honestly the engine's the reason the bike really works, because it's not peaky. And that's the important bit. A lot of middleweight sports bikes still behave like you're trying to qualify at Donington every time you leave a junction. And this, for CF Moto, it doesn't. Below 4,000 it's smooth enough, a bit subdued maybe. Then, around 5 to 6,000 RPM, it starts waking up properly, like it's remembered what it's going to be doing. And from there to about 9,000, it's just this lovely elastic shove of power that feels absolutely perfect for UK roads. You're not constantly smashing down gears trying to stay in a tiny power band, you just roll it on and it goes. And on roads around Sussex, where corners tighten halfway through and tractors appear like jump scares, that usability matters way more than headline horsepower. Now, the chassis, this is the bit that surprised me the most, because the thing's actually really sorted. KYB suspension front and rear, fully adjustable, 45mm upside down forks, steel frame, nothing massively exotic on paper. But out here on proper roads, not racetracks, not smooth Spanish launch roads, proper British tarmac, it just works. The front end's got a good feel, mid-corner stability is genuinely impressive, and it deals with rough surfaces way better than I expected. There's a section of road around this route, and the road surface changes about 4 times in one corner. Normally on cheaper sports bikes you feel the whole chassis tense up a bit. This CF Moto, it just tracks through it. No drama, no nervousness, no weird bouncing out of line. You start trusting it surprisingly quickly. The brakes are strong too. Twin 300mm discs up front, radial calipers, Vergés one, which is a Spanish subsidiary of Brembo, as I was saying earlier. The initial bite's good, plenty of stopping power and nice progression, but, and this is worth mentioning, if you really start pushing on damp roads, the ABS can get slightly involved earlier than you'd ideally want, especially downhill into tighter bends. It's not dangerous, just slightly cautious. Like the bike's politely suggesting maybe calm down a bit before Sussex Council finishes resurfacing literally anything. And yeah, I can imagine on track the ABS may be a bit intrusive and it might be something that you'd want to disconnect, but on the road, as long as you're aware it's there, it's not really an issue, just something to keep in mind. Ergonomically, it sits in really sensible middle ground. As I said earlier, it kind of reminded me of maybe sort of maybe a late 90s, early 2000s Honda CBR 600 for riding position. It's sporty, but it's not over the top sporty. It's something that you feel like you could actually ride for a decent distance without your wrists wanting to kill you. The clip-ons are sporty enough to feel committed, but they're not, as I say, they're not risk destroying. The seat's firm, but it's manageable. The pegs are sporty, but they're not ridiculous. After a couple of hours riding around Sussex and Surrey B roads, you're aware you're on a sports bike, but you're not desperate to get off it. And honestly, that matters because most people buying these aren't doing 20-minute Sunday blasts. They're commuting, they're weekend riding, A-road miles, occasional chaos into London. And the 675 SRR actually handles all that stuff pretty well. Performance-wise, it's properly brisk. 0 to 60, somewhere around the high threes depending on grip and bravery. Top speed, I'd say somewhere around about 135 to 140 mile an hour realistically. But honestly, this bike really isn't about top speed. As I said earlier, it's not designed to compete with the super sport machines like the R9 and the Ducati V2s. No, it's more designed to compete with the middleweight sports bikes like the Yamaha R7 and the Suzuki GSX-8S, and yeah, those sort of bikes, the Triumph Daytona 660, those sort of bikes. And as I say, it's not all about top speed, it's about real world pace, and that 40 to 90 mile an hour zone where most British riding actually happens. And yeah, and in that zone it feels quick. It's not terrifying, it's not intimidating, just effortlessly usable. Now, a little bit about the tyres. The CF Moto comes equipped with CST, yep, you heard that right, CST, 120/70 on the front and 180/55 on the rear. They're sports tyres, and to be fair, they're surprisingly good. How could I really kind of put this in a good way? We're actually talking about confidence. We need to talk about tyres. This is one of those things that can completely change how a bike feels on UK roads. As I say, the SRR runs CST tyres as standard, which, if we're honest, is usually the point where half the internet immediately starts typing angry comments before they've even ridden the thing. But they're actually alright. They're not miraculous, they're not superbike level sticky, but they're far, far better than budget OEM tyres used to be. On damp patches under trees and slight greasy exits, they never gave me a proper oh no, oh shit moment. Front end feel is decent, warm up time's reasonable, and on dry roads they hold well enough that they stop you thinking about them pretty quickly, which I'd say is a compliment to them really. Now, if you're planning track days or riding like your licence has an expiry date, you'd probably eventually end up sticking something a bit stickier on like a set of Rossos or S22s or whatever floats your boat, and unlock a bit more of a chassis. But honestly, the chassis is good enough to deserve better rubber eventually anyway. But for real world Sussex riding, fast A roads, dodgy B roads, cold mornings, commuting and occasional stupidity, for CSTs are absolutely usable, and crucially they suit the character of the bike, because this thing isn't pretending to be a 200 brake horsepower superbike. It's a real world middleweight sports bike, and the tyres are set up to reflect that, and they do that really admirably. Now I suppose if we're talking about it on a usable basis, let's talk about daily use and miles per gallon economy, I suppose. And the fuel economy, yeah, it's decent too. I'd say around 50 to 55 miles per gallon realistically. It's a 15 litre tank, so that's roughly 150 miles usable range before the fuel light starts to emotionally blackmail you. Traffic manners are decent, heat management's fine, and the mirrors, although they're not fantastic, they are usable. Again, it behaves more like a finished product than most people probably expect. Speaking of a TFT display, it's nothing flashy, it's clear, it's easy to read, it tells you everything you need to know and nothing you don't. There are no mega modes for the engine, there's a couple of levels of traction control, but there's quite a nice handy little tip of it gives you your tyre pressure readings, so you can see what your tyre pressures are at a glance, and I found that really quite useful. Another thing I'd probably say is, if you're really beginning to rev it, now I was taking it easy on this test ride because it only had about 50 miles on the clock when I took it out, so I couldn't really give it a sound spanking. But the rev limiter does catch you unaware sometimes, so you've just got to bear that in mind when you're opening up. As you can see in the footage, at one point it did kick in an overtake, but it's not the end of the world. You learn to manage it and you move on. I wouldn't say that's particularly a deal breaker. So I suppose some final thoughts really, and this is the awkward bit for the established brands, I'd say, because the CF Moto, as I say, costs £6,999 in the UK. That comes with a 4-year warranty. It also comes with your roadside assistance. Now, for a proper day riding on roads like I've just been on, I genuinely don't think this bike feels like a cheap alternative. It just feels like a good middleweight sports bike, full stop. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. The low speed throttle could be smoother. The ABS is slightly overprotective if you're really hammering on, and badge snobs still won't get it. But honestly, the engine's strong, the chassis is properly sorted, suspension works on real roads, the build quality is better than expected, and the value, well, it's kind of ridiculous. If you're buying a sports bike purely for the heritage, resale value, or because you want something your mates already approve of, you'll probably still buy a Japanese bike. But if you actually ride real roads, if you care about usable performance, and if you want something that genuinely surprises you, this thing, it deserves a look. Honestly, I came into this expecting to defend it. I didn't expect to actually enjoy it this much, and that's probably the biggest compliment I can give it. So I suppose if I'm giving it a final rating, and I'm talking real world Sussex roads rating, I'll break it down as follows. I'll say engine character, well, that's 8.5 out of 10 to me. Mid-range performance, I'm going to give that a 9 out of 10. Top end performance, well, I'm going to give that an 8 out of 10 for what it is, you know. Chassis and handling, yeah, I'm really not going to knock that. I'm going to give that 9 out of 10. Yes, maybe on a racetrack you might start worrying about grounding it out, but let's talking on real roads there. We're not talking hero lean angles, and it's more than up to the job there. It's really, really good. Suspension wise, I'm going to give it 8.5 out of 10. Brakes, yeah, another 8 out of 10. Maybe, as I say, the ABS slightly, as I say, letting it down a little bit there. Electrics and TFT, yeah, 8.5 out of 10. There's no faffing around, it doesn't give you anything you don't need, everything you do. Comfort and ergonomics, yeah, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. It's not a tourer, but it's not a full balls to wall sports bike either. Build quality, 8.5 out of 10. These things are becoming more and more European and Japanese as they come on. And value for money, well, yeah, I mean, that's going to be a whopping 10 out of 10. I mean, something for 7 grand, under 7 grand on the road, you can't argue with that. So an overall score, I'm going to give it 8.8 out of 10. And that's a really good verdict, I think. And that's a hard score to argue with, because no, it's not perfect. The low speed throttle control could be cleaner. The ABS, as I say, gets a bit overprotective when you're really pushing it on damp roads. And there's still some areas where the Japanese bikes feel slightly more polished. But here's the thing, this costs 7 grand. Yeah, 7 grand, 7. And for that money you're getting a genuinely good triple engine, a properly sorted chassis, decent suspension, strong rear wheel pace, good build quality, modern electronics and a 4-year warranty. And on the actual Sussex roads, not a launch event fantasy road in Spain, it really works. It really works. And that's why the 675 SRR ends up being more than just good for the money. It ends up being good, like genuinely good. So, I suppose, what do you reckon in the comments? Let me know. Would you actually buy one over an R7 or an Aprilia RS660 or a Daytona 660? Or are we all still too emotionally attached to the badges? Anyway, like, subscribe, all that nonsense, or don't. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers guys, bye. And as a final thank you, I'd just like to say thanks to the guys at PK Power Sports in Crossing the Hand for letting me out to play on this 675 for a couple of hours. It's been a great experience. Thanks guys, I'll be back again to play soon.